Harvard's MBA essays have changed for the first time in 10 years. Harvard has changed the way they're evaluating candidates. This is not a small change. This is a huge, huge change to their application. Today, I'm going to tell you how to navigate the new Harvard MBA application essays. Welcome back to MBA Monday. I'm 𝐓𝐢𝐦𝐞𝐬𝐭, the founder of MBA Protocol. I'm a career coach, I'm an MBA coach, and I've got nearly 20 years of experience helping people achieve their MBA dreams, including frequently, year after year, admission to Harvard. I've been working on this application for almost 20 years. And this change, you guys, it's a bombshell. It's the biggest change in admissions since the introduction of Wharton's team-based discussion and the introduction of Kellogg's video essay. This is a huge, huge change in the admissions landscape. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a brief history of the Harvard MBA application. Then I'm going to talk about what this new direction means for Harvard's candidate evaluation strategy and what that means for you in your application as a whole. And then finally, I'm going to point you to the very most important thing you need to understand about these MBA essays before you tackle them. So let's start with the history of the Harvard MBA application. Now, this isn't that relevant to you because you're applying this year. What they asked about last year and every year before doesn't affect you. You've just got to answer the essay questions they've put in front of you this year. But I think it's useful to understand where their application has come from and where it's come to help you contextualize any other advice that you're going to find on the internet, which is now entirely out of date. Harvard has changed their evaluation criteria, they've changed their essay questions, and if I can read between the lines, they've even shifted a little bit of their philosophy, or at least doubled down on their previous philosophy about how they're going to prioritize candidates in the process. So it started, when I started my admissions career many, many years ago, Harvard actually used to have 3 or 4 questions. And the entire Harvard application had something like 2,000 words. You were asked to describe successes and failures. You were asked to present a career game plan, a personal statement about your goals. And then several years ago, when Dee Leopold was running the Harvard Admissions Committee, she replaced all of that with one simple question, which is, what do you want us to know? What more do you want us to know as we evaluate your candidacy to Harvard Business School? Now, Dee ran a tight ship. The Harvard Admissions Committee got a lot more organized, they got a lot more streamlined, their processes really got clearly developed in her days. And in the early days, that essay question had no word limit. So you could really just take your time. You know, the rule of thumb was, you want the essay to be short. I had a different philosophy about that, but water under the bridge. Point is, you really had as much space as you needed to truly tell your story and to show the admissions committee the kind of person that you are. Then Chad Lozay came in, and wise individual looked at the admissions process and said, well, this isn't broken, so I'm not going to change a thing. And so under Chad's reign, the admissions process at Harvard remained largely the same, and that allowed them to make tweaks on the back end and tweaks on the front end to make the experience more meaningful for the candidate and to further improve on a system and a process that was already working really, really well. In the process, he introduced a 900-word limit to that essay, but that was really the only change that we've seen in the Harvard MBA application for about a decade. And now we have a new Dean of Admissions at HBS. Her name is 𝐓𝐢𝐦𝐞𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐩𝐬. She comes from HBS herself. She was an HBS student, and she has a marketing background. So the primary foundation of her career to date has been in marketing. She worked at brands like Sara Lee, Campbell's Soup, Booz & Co. in consulting, and then she joined Brand Union as a strategy and research director for consumer and corporate clients. So her whole background is really in branding and marketing, which is a totally different skill set from Chad, who came from Bain, from management consulting. So he was optimizing for, very likely, a lot of different dimensions, whereas the choice of this new dean suggests that Harvard is looking to emphasize the elevation of their brand and the marketing of their program. And indeed, the new application reflects this choice. So it's not a huge surprise that RuPaul decided to change the MBA application. It's a big bummer to me personally, because if you've been watching any of the videos we've put out about Harvard over the years, you know that I loved that Harvard MBA application essay. In fact, when I wrote my letter, my open letter to the new director of the admissions committee back in February of 2023, when they named the new AdCom director, along with Stanford. I wrote a letter to both Stanford and Harvard because they both had new admissions directors, and these are, of course, the stalwart, everybody's favorite MBA applications. I had a few tips, I had a few thoughts for Stanford. You know, my 2 cents. I've been doing this job for a long time. I have some ideas. I thought I'd share them. But my advice to Harvard was, and I quote, "But to you, new director of admissions at HBS, I say, please don't change a thing." I've always thought that the HBS application was really the most perfect of all the MBA application essays out there. It was the best process. It got them the most meaningful information about candidates, while also giving candidates the best chance to really show their best selves in the application. So I was hopeful that they would leave things as they were, but no, things have changed. There are now new admissions criteria, new essay questions. Some of the other pieces of the process will likely stay the same: the online application, the interview, the last word, post-interview reflection are remaining the same, but the essay questions have changed, and this is a big and meaningful change. What does this new direction mean for the application? Well, first of all, you want to make sure to check out Harvard's new evaluation criteria. They have a new description of who are we looking for. And in the old days, if you went to this page, you would see that they were looking for engaged community citizenship, a habit of leadership, and analytical aptitude and appetite. Those 3 criteria have now been replaced by 3 new criteria, which roughly mirror the old concepts. Instead of engaged community citizenship, you've got this new thing called business-minded, which is defined in a sort of vague and nebulous way. You can see the touch of marketing speak in here. Being business-minded is about the interest to help organizations succeed in any sector. So they're bringing your focus not to the community or to your life as an engaged citizen, but rather to your career as an agent for the development and growth of organizations and institutions. That's an interesting change. We're going to have to see what that ultimately means in terms of broader HBS values. The second quality is leadership focused. So rather than a habit of leadership, they frame it as leadership focused. And then they go on to explain that leadership can look a lot of different ways. It can take a lot of different shapes. But no surprise, leadership is still a focal point in the evaluation criteria. And then finally, they're seeking individuals who are growth oriented. So rather than highlighting the need for analytical aptitude and appetite, that feature of your candidacy is being rolled into business-minded now. So they say, we look for evidence of your interpersonal skills, quantitative abilities, and the ways in which you plan to create impact through business in the future. That's what they're saying business-minded means for your application. Growth orientation is really about curiosity. It's about approaching your life with a growth mindset and an appetite for improvement and evolution and transformation as an individual. So different criteria, different language, same basic ideas, but if you read between the lines of this page and where they have directed you to think about your candidacy, what you'll notice is that most of what they're saying about what they're evaluating is packed into this business-minded concept. So this is where they're looking for interpersonal skills, quantitative abilities, and the ways in which you plan to have an impact. In the old days, that sort of spanned everything. That was the entire application. And indeed, the new essay questions reflect a much tighter and more constrained orientation towards your life and career. The bottom line is they're giving you a lot less space and a lot less creative freedom to express yourself and show them who you are. So in addition to changing the evaluation criteria, they have now also changed the essay questions themselves to reflect these new criteria. You've got 3 questions, one about being business-minded, one about being leadership-focused, and one about being growth-oriented. These each have extremely tight word limits, 300, 250, 250. It's a totally different game than the 900-word, tell us what you want to tell us. I had so much respect for the old days when Harvard really gave people the chance to just fully express themselves. I have to imagine that it got them the most interesting essays and the most valuable information about candidates. Changing to these 3 short essays is going to really change the dynamic for the admissions committee. When I read these questions, I understood that the person who, or the people, or the group of people who came up with these questions have not been in the candidate evaluation business as long as I have, because what I've learned in my 20 years in this job is that you can't get super unique and valuable information about an individual in 300 words. It's not possible for someone to show you something deeply meaningful in 300 words. Take, for example, a life experience like losing a parent or changing geographies and moving to a new culture and having to adapt. To even begin to do justice to experiences like that, you need about 300 words total to just describe the experience and describe its impact on you and how it changed the way you look at the world and how you think about things. 300 words is going to be tight just to show the experience itself. But Harvard's business-minded essay says, please reflect on how your experiences have influenced your career choices and aspirations and the impact you will have on the businesses, organizations, and communities you plan to serve. So you've got to talk about that experience very briefly and then talk about all the ways in which it has impacted you, including the future you hope to have after business school. It's a tall task. Inherently, Harvard is either signaling this deliberately or they're going to understand the consequences very soon that they're not going to get as much valuable information from these essays as they used to get from the old essay, which means their strategy of relying heavily on the caliber of your profile, your statistics, the part of you that's black and white on paper, that has always been important at Harvard. My guess is this year it's going to be even more important. So what does this mean for you? Number one, it means you need to shore up those statistics. So if you're still working on the test and it's not at the level of past Harvard classes, if your test score is below the average of Harvard's past admitted classes, take it again. Get that test score as high as you can get it. Second thing is make sure that your resume is as strong as it can be, and I don't just mean that in terms of your career trajectory, I also mean that in terms of the way you frame your achievements in the resume. You need to focus on impact. You need to show the school that you have already done amazing things in your career, because you're not going to have the space to do that in these essays. And then the third thing is that it puts even more pressure on those recommendations. We've suspected for a long time that Harvard has valued the recommendations even over the essay. We can't know if that's true, but what I can say for sure is that if I'm the admissions committee this year and I'm reading these 3 short essays, and then I'm reading a much longer, more robust recommendation, the recommendation is going to hold more sway just by default, whether that's intended or not. It will hold more sway over the decision than the essays will. So your top 3 priorities before you get into brainstorming and working on these essays, which I'll talk all about in my next video, is to shore up your statistics, your resume, and your recommendations. I hope to see you right here on MBA Monday next week, where I'm going to talk about how to tactically brainstorm and think about these essay questions more specifically as they relate to your story, so that you can show your very best self in these 3 tiny little boxes that Harvard is giving you to write these essays. I'll see you right here next week. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn the bell on so that you get notified every time we've got a new MBA Monday. I'll see you next week. It is a sad, sad day in the MBA admissions world. Well, not today, actually. A couple weeks ago, when Harvard, after many, many wonderful years of having the very best MBA application essay in the world, changed their question.